Now basically our project is over. But stacked here in the corner, there's a few last things that need to be taken up. We've got that motor, which I imagine will just require pulling it apart and freeing up some bearings. The rib fence, while nothing spectacular, there was also nothing wrong with it, so a good quick polish there. And then those two fences there. Given the damage I'm finding on the saw, the clear signs that this thing had tumbled over at some point, I'm a little concerned that those are going to be bent. Other than really kind of getting down and dirty and inspecting that aspect, we're basically ready to rock here. Here tonight with my helper, and we're going to have a look-see at this motor. The fact that water is pouring out of the capacitor housing, we'd call that not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. However, oh, she is stiff. Not only is it stiff, but I can actually feel individual ball bearings as they roll. Okay, we can deal with that. First and foremost, we got to get the motor out of its cradle. You do not have to remove it from the mount. You loosen these screws here, and this one is behind the shroud here, and then this motor clamp will pop off. At that point, remove that bolt, the whole thing will lift out of its cradle. There's no need to take that apart. Before we pull anything, we got to get this pulley off. Getting the pulleys off can be a bit of a crapshoot. Sometimes they come without destroying them, sometimes they don't. I think for this, I'm going to pull that keeper out, and I'm going to try a little bit of heat with a plumbing torch. I think because this is sort of a cheap pot metal pulley, the heat, it'll expand faster than the center shaft, and I'm hoping I can just get her off of there. If I destroy it, you just go down to the hardware store. They're pretty cheap. I mean, this one is, I can actually see where it's bent. This pulley's ugly. It's had a hard life. It's probably related to whatever it was that damaged the table saw so much. The fall, the smash, whatever that was. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this apart.
When animal cookies to the stove, and you take them really fast.
How'd you get them?
Them for the cooking time.
Did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
I got lucky here. I loosened it up, and while it didn't want to move, just pulling on it, I'm able to pull it off with a gear puller by hand. Alright, that came with the keyway, which is important because the keyway would have to come off anyways. Now to loosen up those two clamps and lift it out. Yay, look at that. Oh, hooray, screwdriver is broken too. There's another clamp off. And then looks like this has got to come off. Looks like in order to get this off, this pulley guard has got to be removed. No. Before you crack the case, take a moment and mark it. Alright, I'll consider it. Okay? Okay, get these apart. Sometimes they've got little spots where you can get a screwdriver in and twist it sideways against the case. What am I doing? Am I dragging the whole armature out? I am. not bad, really. This is our starting switch right here. Seems to be all right. So what that does is as the motor comes up to speed, centrifugal force pulls these two bars out, pulling that in. When that happens, it allows this switch, which is normally held closed, to release. So this is driving the startup circuitry, and then released is the continuous circuitry. So when you saw on the side of the saw 3 horsepower, it was probably the startup circuit, assuming this is the original motor, and there's zero guarantee of that. The only thing I really feel wrong with these is just simply age. Age and grease. Age and grease, buddy. Oh, wow. That was easy. Underneath the front end cap, you're going to have some sort of spring tension device. That just fits down in there. And so when the motor is squeezed together, it maintains tension on the bearings. Well, it's nice that this one came off. They are SKF 6203s. They show no signs of rust, but they do show that they've been sitting like this for an extended period of time, and the grease in the summer or warm or whatnot has kind of flowed out and around. I'm not sure how to get that one out. You can't pry on the aluminum fins. You just can't. And there's no way I'm getting in there with a gear puller that far down. So I'm going to try polishing this shaft to smooth this passage as much as possible. I wouldn't do this if you had rubber seals. That's not true. If I had no other choice, I'd do it anyways. It's just because these are shielded, not sealed bearings, I can't hurt them. Alright, I found that if I took one of my small clamps and I took the cheek plates off one of my larger clamps, that combined, I can get enough height. Can I really though? Oh, wait a minute. This might all be for naught. Oh, I mean, look at that. Just barely. I can get enough height, I think, to do this. But in order for that to happen, I need a center point. So, I had to drill one because this uses a tit, and that was a flat surface. It's not quite in the middle, but that won't matter. It's only designed to hold it somewhat in the middle while this pops loose. I'm going to have to take this clamp loose. Slip this in. When you pull on these bearings, there's two spots you can pull on. You can pull on these outer edges. You can pull on these inner edges. You cannot push in the center. That'll destroy the dust shield. Anybody want to take a guess where the clamp falls? I'm just going to go for it. If I wreck the bearing, oh, and I probably am. There it went. We won't know if I wrecked it or not until we get it all the way loose. Oh, shit, look at that. We didn't wreck it. Ha ha. Nice. Can you say nice? Nice. Nice. All right, these can be laid aside. You'll want to clean them before you put them together. But let's let's go clean us up some bearings. I've got the bearings soaking in some mineral spirits, and while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and clean up these end caps some. This isn't super critical or even really very necessary beyond just some basic cleaning to put it back together. But it makes the whole thing look nicer, more professional. Cleaning the starting switch is a bit more important. That right there is the thermal override. That's nice to have. Means it's probably not possible to burn this motor out. Say if saw jams or something. You want to be careful not to change the balance on this. So if you clean any of it, clean all of it. But again, nothing you're going to do here short of breaking off fins is going to do any damage. That's all there is to it. There's really nothing very complicated or scary inside the motors. And always remember, if you totally screw it up, they aren't very expensive. I had replaced this brand spanking new for $60 for a Harbor Freight, maybe less. It's on sale. Higher quality one, still less than $100. Personally, I go to scrap yards. Go to scrap yard. If the motor spins and it doesn't smell burned, even if it doesn't turn when you plug it in, it almost certainly is fine once you take it apart and clean it. Speaking of cleaning, let's look at those bearings. Oh, the method for cleaning these is neither complicated or sophisticated. I soak them in mineral spirits. Remember to use gloves and then eye protection because it flicks up at you. Then I'll spin and then dunk and spin and dunk, and then when you're done, you slam them flat down. And that's driving all the chunkies out around that race there. This isn't the best thing in the world to do. Best thing in the world to do would be go get 2 brand new ones. But I can tell you from past experience that there's about a 95% chance that doing this and relubing them will keep them going as long as the saw is operational. Oh, that ought to do it. You're going to want to put them on some metal and warm them up a little. Number one, it'll help you when it comes time to get lubrication in there. And 2, it'll help you burn out all of your solvent. You can see the solvent burning out of them. It is this fog that is coming out from around the shielded bearings. Again, if you have sealed bearings, number one, they're better than these. These are old school here, but this also won't work.
Dad.
My recommendation...
Dad.
Oh, little spider. My recommendation for bad sealed bearings is new sealed bearings. Don't touch, it's hot.
Dad, supposed to cut these long wires?
Yeah, I'll cut those wires. Well, you're going to let them... You don't want them cool. In fact, if I wasn't cutting long wires, I'd immediately pump them in the oil. You're going to want to drop them in the oil, and then we'll go ahead and do the vacuum thing. When it comes to regreasing your bearings, you've really got one thing working against you. You got air inside that you need to swap out with some oil or some grease, but the seals, or in this case the dust shield, is so tight you can't really get bubbles out normally. So one of the things that I do is I will put them both completely submerged, in this case gear oil. Preferably while your wife isn't around, you're going to want to drop your can with its sealed lid, has to be glass, the lid has to be a canning jar lid, in your double boiler as if you were canning carrots or something. You're going to do it the exact same way. You're going to bring the water temperature up to boil, you're going to give it 10 minutes, then you're going to turn it off and set it somewhere. And of course, as it heats up, air escapes past these lids, so that's how they're designed. And then when it cools down, they seal and the tops pop in, and now you've got a small vacuum going on inside here. And what that'll do, with conjunction with the hot grease or hot oil. Shay, 1 second. 4-year-olds. What that will do, of course, is that will pull that air out of these bearings. Now, that works, and I've done it, especially when I'm away from home. At home, I cheat. I use a vacuum pump, and I can accomplish this task in like a minute and a half. So I'm going to go ahead and cheat now. But do know that it can work on the stove. Double boiler now. Look up how you can. If you don't know how to can, look it up. That's what you're doing. Do not just put this on your burner. You will regret that. Now I've gone ahead and cheated. So I'll just bring them up and give them a chance to drip dry. Alright, now it's full of oil, but it's over full. So you're going to want to do this for a little bit, and you should notice that it barfs up some oil. It's really only the shielded bearings that do this to this extent. But hopefully you can hear the difference. So we have now got a bearing that, while the methods might be unorthodox, this bearing is going to be turning for another couple of decades. If you don't like this in any way, I doubt that that bearing is more than $10. So you can go pick up a set of them really cheap and just put new ones in your motor. Sometimes I do stuff like this. I don't know. I'm cheap. There we go. Stop barfing the oil. There's one repaired used bearing. Alright, so we're ready to put this back together. Now, with luck, these will just press back on. Oh, perfect. Press back on just surprisingly well. Scary well. Not that one. You're going to want to find a little piece of pipe that fits over this so that you can push this bearing down. Okay, here we go, bud. Now our bar doesn't have to fit snugly. It just has to fit so that when you tap, you're tapping only on this inner ring. And then light taps, you should not have to force this. The sound will change when the bearing bottoms out. This here, once again, is your startup switch. You can't put a whole lot of oil and grease down in there, or it'll just collect sawdust. So once again, I'm bringing out our trusty wax. To be honest, it probably doesn't need anything, but now that's done. This slips in through there. Don't worry about lining up your end caps yet. Here is the face of the motor. I guess you want to make sure that your caps are close. Here's the motor's front, the drive front. Where's my marks? Where's my marks? This is why you mark them in a couple of spots, because you never know if things are going to move. Things are going to get wiped off. Alright, so those three line up perfectly now. The rear ones. The rear ones line up perfectly. Sometimes slipping these through Can be a bit of a blind exercise, but that went fine. Why did you hammer the pencil in there, bud?
I didn't hammer the pencil.
You didn't hammer the pencil? Because I can tell you right now, I didn't hammer the pencil. There you go.
The circle, somehow I'll play with this circle.
Look at that. Remember what it was like before? You could barely spin it with your fingers. That is very acceptable. Okay, now this is this end. And that end is this dead end here. So we know that the motor goes in like that. Oh no! What have we forgot to put in there? Well, don't forget your spring clip, or you'll be doing it all over again. Alright, so quick look at what I forgot to do. I forgot to put that spring tension washer down in there. That's it. Now the whole thing can go back together again. Suppose it helped if it went the right way around. Now, you saw how that went before. I'm just going to put it back together and jump to it. Alright, now we can get back with the motor properly put back together. Make sure you give it a spin. You don't want to hear anything dragging. It's fine. Well, okay. The starter switch drags, but you don't want to hear any like ticking. If it ticks, something's touching. You need to take it back apart. Probably a wire. I can say from the marks, this was the dead end, meaning that is the end that was covered. So that's this end here. So, motor goes in. Like so. Now these two bars are going to go in straight in the table saw, so tipping the motor like this will put all of these vents here down. That's important. Your saw is going to suck enough sawdust. You do not want these vents sticking up, or sawdust and wood chips and crap will fall in there. They will, trust me. So, however your saw goes, I know this goes on the saw just like that. However your saw goes, you need to mount your motor so that the vent holes are to the bottom. Those two clamps just split around. This is so much easier with the guards removed. I can't believe I took it apart with the guards on it. Now for the pulley. This is a 2.5 inch, which seems to me to be very small. But maybe somebody geared it down to give it more horsepower. It makes sense with a 1-horse motor. For right now I'm just going to leave it loose because we'll have to modify it to line up with our belt. But we are ready to plug this bad boy in and see how I did. Now this is far from my first motor I've rebuilt this way. And there was just no way I was going to plug this in as bad as it was prior. That was a good way to smoke some bearings. So we don't have a before sound. But we can probably imagine. Now that dragging noise, that was the startup winding. That ticking noise, it's that rattle I don't like. Hear it? It's that forward bearing, I think. Maybe they were worse than I thought. Well, if your startup winding isn't working properly, the motor won't start at all, or it'll start and it'll hum really loud, and that's the startup winding that's not disengaging. You can actually hear this one when it disengages. There, you hear it. And when I start it, you can hear it when it engages. So my startup windings are working properly, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go put somebody to BED.
We be somebody.
You're somebody, aren't you? Hey, show everybody your black eye you got out here in the shop with Daddy. Look. Oh, no, that didn't make it. I mean, just turn and look. Look at that shiner, buddy. Oh, you poor thing. Sometimes the shop is hard, huh? Well, I'm going to go put him to bed and let this thing run the entire time. And come back and listen. It's possible we're still just the new grease and the old grease is getting to know each other in the bearings. Not ideal, but not necessarily a deal breaker. Sounds like it's smoothed out already. Okay, some of that rattle is just the mount. Yeah, I think we're fine. I believe that new grease and old grease was getting acquainted, and they weren't necessarily happy, but it's going to be okay. And if it's not okay, well, it's hardly a difficult process to change it. That ticks the motor off our list. Really, the only thing we got left now, finish painting the wings, wire it, and find a belt. This thing will be cutting wood tomorrow.